Hi, everybody. I'm Pastor Bob from the Cause Church, and you are at session 8 of the Best Life Ever series on the 10 Commandments. We're looking at in this session at commandment number 8, you shall not steal. Wow, that's a straightforward commandment, isn't it? That we are not to take things that are not ours. I call this the desire to acquire gone haywire. Men and women, stealing takes a lot of different expressions in a lot of different forms, and it's really primal to who we are as people. One of the things you'll see little kids do, because of how they perceive the world, they think everything is theirs. And so it's not uncommon. If you've raised children, you're taking care of children, you're around grandkids or nieces and nephews, at the little they, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, what do? Somehow they end up with stuff that's not theirs. Now, they'll tell you stories about this stuff, but quite often it's just that they have been at somebody's house, they've been at some situation, and they want what they've seen. They want what somebody else has. It's a desire to acquire gone haywire. Now, listen, at 2, 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, parents can take care of those kind of issues. But when it's showing up at 14, 15, 16, and if it's not related to some sort of other challenge in your life, that's a bigger problem. And ultimately, it can be a gigantic problem if people don't understand at some point in time that it is wrong to take things that aren't yours. If our communities are going to be healthy communities, we're going to have to be respectful of other people's property, respectful of other people's lives, respectful of their reputation, and we need to trust that God is in control, right? You shall not steal, the desire to acquire gone haywire. What is at the root of this dysfunction, this commandment that is so easily broken, even though we don't really like to admit it? Sometimes if we're not caught, we don't think we've done anything wrong. Well, guess what? God sees everything, right? What is at the heart of it, from my perspective, is this. It's that we don't really trust God. In other words, we're saying to the Lord, Lord, I don't believe that you can or will take care of me, so I'm literally going to take things into my own hands. We don't trust him. Psalms 24:1 says this, the earth is the Lord's and all its fullness. So we take things that don't belong to us. What are the dynamics or the dimensions of stealing? Well, it's first of all, it's taking stuff that is not your own. There's a fascinating story that is it's powerful, about when the Israelites had first gone into the Promised Land. They conquered the first city of Jericho, which was the key city, the most fortified city. It was the key one to conquer. God did it, but he told them, he said, do not take any of the plunder from the city. When they would have gone into the city, if you conquered a city, all of the goods and everything was fair game to the conquerors. God said, don't do this. Now listen, everybody obeyed except for one guy named Achan. By the way, this story is in Joshua chapter 7. Achan, he just couldn't pass up certain things. Man, he saw this beautiful, expensive garment from Babylon. He saw these bars of silver and other precious things. So he took it and he buried it under a tent. Well, that brought a sin into the camp, and it literally brought about a tremendous and surprising defeat at the next city, Ai, which should have been a pushover even for the Israelites, who didn't even have really a fighting army at that point in time. Should have been an easy pushover. Instead, they were defeated roundly. God showed Joshua that somebody had violated his command to say, don't take this stuff, don't steal it. I don't want you to have these kind of things. So when we do these things, when we take from people, take from situations that is not ours, we're bringing on we're lifting God's favor in our life. And so we end up getting defeated by little things later on when we should be walking in victory. Stealing is also withholding from somebody what is rightfully theirs. When we withhold it from them, what is rightfully theirs. There's a lot of joking about things we borrow from neighbors, but it does make a good point. If a neighbor's loaned you something, make sure to get it back. But even beyond that, when we owe something to somebody and don't pay it, even though we can pay it, that's wrong. That's a form of stealing. I hate to get so personal because I know it's an emotional issue, but if you owe child support and you're refusing to pay it, if you have the ability to pay it and you're not paying it, that's a form of theft. Hey, listen, I know the courts aren't always fair and just, but a ruling is a ruling, and sometimes you just have to go back through and rework things, right? Stealing is also taking advantage of people by deception, by deceiving them, by leading them to believe that a product is of a better quality than it really is. You're actually stealing from people when you do from that. And then probably most of you know this, but we also can steal from God as well too. Do you realize that? Malachi 3 says, we rob God when we don't participate in his tithes and offerings. So we're actually stealing from God. You can read that in Malachi chapter 3. Stealing hurts our soul and our spirit. It hurts our relationships, and stealing ultimately forces us into breaking the 9th commandment, which we'll look at in the next session. It forces us into lying. Stealing thwarts everything that God is trying to develop in a church, in a family, in a community. Thou shalt not steal. Listen, I understand sometimes we can be envious of what other people have, but the way to get it is not by stealing, not by taking from them. The way to acquire those things is by hard work, trusting God, being patient, and seeing what God does in your life. Let's don't steal people's stuff. Let's don't steal their reputation. Let's don't steal their dreams. Come on, let's build people up and be a part of what God is doing in their life. God's ways are always better.